Liftoff.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's question of the week. You can get those to us on Twitter or Facebook, as longtime listener and supporter Philippe Boucher did for us. Actually, this one is one where I think we're all doing. Everyone did do it, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, everyone is doing it. It's kind of one of those questions that when we first mentioned it, we all sort of chuckled about because it sounds sort of like one of those setup questions. But I think answered seriously, it might give you an interesting glimpse into what it's like for those of us on this side of the games industry who talk about and look at games for long times. And that question is, why do you play games? And for me, it's a many layered answer that I'll break down into a couple of pieces. For one, over the years I've done a lot of different entertainment media, whether it was books. I was definitely into reading a lot of fiction, science fiction, and fantasy novels for a long time, especially fantasy sagas, the Belgariad, the Malorian, to name a few. So I obviously liked those big sorts of series. There's also, of course, television and movies that I got involved in. And as games developed for me, one of the things that I found most rewarding about them was a personal interaction with the narrative. And so let me kind of give you what that means to me as far as why I play games. So there's a lot of people who play games simply for the manual dexterity of it, right? There's that piece, I think, that comes through very strong in Call of Duty, because a lot of Call of Duty comes down to, in addition to tactics, don't get me wrong, I'm not belittling the tactics and map management and weapon management and knowing all that. A good bit of it does come down to, strictly speaking, stick skills. And there's a competitive element in there, and for sure some gaming applies that to me. I really get into that competitive piece. But for the narrative side, which I think is why I like David Cage's sort of games, the Fahrenheit's, the upcoming game Beyond, which we saw Ellen Page talking about very eloquently at Comic-Con, it's because they really give you a chance to have a great narrative experience that you also feel involved and engaged in. And I think that that's probably, in large part, why I felt the separation with Spec Ops, The Line, and it just didn't connect with me, because at its heart, it was still very much about the down the gun barrel experience, and I don't think you can be especially meaningful when you're mowing down, tens and tens or even hundreds of body count. It's just really hard to pull that off. So why I play games for the narrative is to have that involvement, to see those big characters. It's also quite a bit why I like Japanese role-playing games, because they typically have a stronger narrative structure. I think that if you go back to Western games of the Baldur's Gate era, you see a lot of that, where every encounter had a sort of handcrafted nature to it, as opposed to what's become popularized now, sort of an extension of what we see in the MMO world of big expansive worlds with lots to do, which, granted, that feeds a whole nother reason why we play, but not necessarily why I play. So for narratives, that's why I play. And then another area that I quite enjoy are things like sports games and real-time strategy games and turn-based strategy games. And I think those games, they sort of work in a different part of the brain. They work in a part of the brain where you learn how the game works, and it increasingly challenges you to combine two pieces together. The piece being the tactical understanding of how the game works and what to do in what situation, and then the applied science of that, of being able to do the right thing at the right time with the controller or the mouse and keyboard. And that's really rewarding. That's a really quick reward. That's not the long-term reward of a narrative or seeing a big story unfold. That's the very immediate response of, that dude just tank rushed me and I knew exactly how to stop that, or vice versa. I just tank rushed the shit out of that dude and kicked his ass all over the place. So there's a really good feeling when you do that, which is, by the way, is another reason that Madden and the current state of EA Sports Football really bugs me, is because you can know all the tactical part all you want, but there's so many pieces that just get completely borked because the fundamental game of football has flaws in it. So I'd love to see that improved. Anyway, two reasons that I play games. There are many others. I'd love to know why you play games as well. So you can interact with us, of course, here in the notes underneath on this YouTube video, or if you're on the Shack, come by Chatty, or of course the regular weekly Weekend Confirmed thread, because we come out every Friday on iTunes, the feeds, and on Shack News. Don't miss it, and we will talk to you again next week.
We're going to
talk about it as a control because that's what it really is.
Win,
Nice in
beat
concept,
other people
but
and
it
let
also
them know that
shows
you beat
how much they
them,
let you kind
or
of hide
perhaps
under
you
this
do it
umbrella
because
of
laxity.
whimsy,
There's
thinking
a
that
lot of
everyone's going to
reasons,
be won
but for
over
me,
like they were the first
personally,
time with Wii, when
I
everyone
do it
really
because
internalized that
it's something, it's an
good
escape for
concept
me.
doesn't
Video
translate
games are one of
necessarily
the
into
few
practical
things in
application
my life that I
of
do
things, and I think it really
where I
continues
just
this
check
year.
out.